All right, welcome back to another episode of our podcast. We have a very exciting episode today. Uh, Real quick, my name is David Levine, founder and CEO of Rest Tech Solutions, and I'd like to introduce and welcome Terry Baylor, who's our guest today. I know we're going to have some great information, so please stay tuned. And Terry, so glad you're able to join me today, and I'd like to give you the opportunity real quick to introduce yourself and give us a very short background about your business.
Sure. David, thank you for having me. Terry Baylor, Life Technology started back in 2022. And man, we're just here to really serve the community that we're looking to, that we're focused and target on servicing today is healthcare. And we're out here helping small and mid-sized practices bridge the gap, right? Whether it's technology gap, whether it's compliance gaps, and we spent a lot of time in the field, door knocking and saying, "Hi, how are you? And what's the big thing for you in 2026?" So,
Yeah, thank you, Terry. And I just want to say I'm very excited to have you here. I know we do a lot of similar things. We might work with similar audience, but I think today's all about, coming together and really sharing some valuable information to help make the community as a whole much more secure. And that way, we're all secure. So, with that, I'd love to jump into our initial question to kick us off. Healthcare organizations are often stuck balancing innovation with restrictive regulations. So, Terry, can you tell me from your experience, what's the biggest barrier preventing healthcare teams from moving past compliance only thinking and actually modernizing their technology?
yeah, you know what? I think even from a compliance standpoint, I think that is also somewhat of a challenge. In that, I would say the biggest hurdle, though, is they believe that they're not vulnerable, right? Just recently I had an event where I invited some of the healthcare leaders in our community, right? Within, let's say, 15-mile radius from our main office. And, we brought those healthcare leaders and providers in. And the resounding message we heard is we're too small. And that's one of the biggest misnomers. I just read an article, the top 5 reasons why small and mid-sized healthcare organizations believe that they, aren't a target. The number one on that list was we are too small. I, Bad actors like the small guys because they get to practice there. The risk is low for them. And, any kind of payout is a win. So, I would say just understanding that, you are not too small. I have, tons of, folks who work with us who are in the industry. And one of the resounding messages is they love the low hanging fruit because it allows for them to, practice their craft, right? Which is being a bad actor. So if I know I can go somewhere and get an easy win, then they're going to go and get that easy win because it's about sharpening their tools just like we're sharpening our tools. Hope that answers your question.
Yeah. Well, and I like that you brought that up because I actually 100% agree. I hear that a lot too. It's like we're too small. Well, I always like to, push back on people and ask, well, okay, you have business email, right? You have at least a computer, right? Okay, there's a way people can get in your business, get information. You don't have to be this big business. You don't have to have a physical location. You don't have to have a physical network. Most things we do these days are digital, they're in their cloud. So, what are you doing to protect that data, protect yourself, and protect your reputation? Because, what if you don't have the proper protections on your email and the domains that run your email? And someone then is able to spoof you, and now they're sending out emails that look like from you to your clients or potential clients, and how are they harming your reputation? So even though you may be a small business, the consequences can be dire. You don't want to be in a position where even something minor can snowball to the point where you have to shutter your doors.
Correct, correct. And I think one of the things, I try my best to message to them as well in a way that's, I really try to do it in a way that's not like fear mongering in a way. It's more, I'm an educator, kind of teacher type, that's my style. And so what I really try to emphasize is look, I give numbers, 60%, over 60% of small businesses after a breach, they go under within 6 months. It's a pretty large number. So, can you sustain any level of disruption to your business? Can you sustain any level of reputation impact to your business? And so I ask those kind of questions and then ask them, well, if this were to occur, how would you address it? And the other thing is, I try to emphasize as well, let's emphasize the crawl, walk, run method, right? We don't have to go full Monty here. So, what will you determine, or what do you believe your highest risk is? Then let's start a conversation there. Right? If you think it's email, let's start a conversation there. If you think it's your electronic health record, let's start a conversation there. If you think it's and how are you doing that? Then let's start that conversation. I'm super excited. I'm super excited. I have a meeting today, which it was quite honestly, I was surprised to get the reach out, but I've been consistent in my communication and in showing up. And here recently, I'm launching a readiness assessment end of year campaign, and so I'm doing what I normally do. Visiting, doing handouts. Then I follow up with an email campaign. And one of the folks that I've been, consistently communicating with, and we have great communication. I've met with them once before, and they reached out, "Hey, Terry, can we meet next week? Because we just went through some additional training and there's some gaps in our understanding." So I'm excited to see where this goes. I'm not necessarily from a sales standpoint, but from an education standpoint, from a partnering, from a trust. And the fact that they've reached out is really, honestly, that's the win for me already, because I'm being seen as a trusted partner. And that's really all we want to be, right? Everything is going to spring from that landscape, right? Are you a trusted partner? Are you a trusted voice? Can they rely on the information that you're provided? What have you done up until this point to give them that level of comfort? So as I look back over my exchange with this particular lead, I'm like, okay, you know what? I believe the things that we're doing are beneficial. And so I expect to see more of this, honestly.
No, that's good. And, just kind of continuing on. So I know the biggest thing, we've mentioned is, business think they're too small. And then I think you'd also, if I recall, you mentioned something, well, they think they've already got things covered. Well, what do you
Yes.
tell a business when, it's like you're talking with them? It's like, oh, no, we've got all that handled. What do you like to tell them, or how do you go about? It's like, well, can we confirm that? Would you like a second opinion?
Sure, sure. Yeah, so basically how I deal with that, right? So a buddy of mine, we've worked together several years, and we have a saying, what you don't measure, you can't manage. If you're not measuring it, you can't manage it. So when they say they're ready, I'll ask questions, that lead to, okay, so what type of awareness do you have around that? Do you have a dashboard? Do you get what is your incumbent doing, or what are you doing if you're doing this in house? How do you know? And so the biggest question, the biggest answer I get when I ask those kind of questions are, well, our EHR is HIPAA compliant. And I applaud them for that. I say, you are exactly right about that. Your EHR, that connection from your endpoint, right? That TLS connection, is a HTTPS connection. It's secure. You see the little lock right up there that lets you know that that connection from your device to their cloud solution is. But what about that device? Is that device secure, right? Is your network secure, right? And so I'll give a scenario, right? Because I constantly stay abreast of what kind of breaches and what things are happening in this market. And I'll give an example. Well, there's a the use case out there where someone got access to a workstation, put a malware on it, and every 30 seconds, this particular malware was taking screenshots and sending screenshots of the health record out to some sort of cloud, storage. Right. So was the EHR secure? Yes, it was. Was the connection from the endpoint to the EHR secure? Yes, it was. But you had malware on your machine that was exfiltrating data that you didn't know was occurring. So could that be you? Right. So I give those kind of scenarios to help explain there are layers of security. And so as a part of our presentation, when we sit down with clients, we talk to them and we have a nice little slide that shows there are layers of security. The first layer starts with information, right? Security awareness training. Then the next layer is that endpoint, right? Then the next layer is your identity. And then from there, your endpoint. And then we just walk them up, right? Then there's your network, right? Then there's the cloud, right? And so we walk them through that to help them understand you have one component of the layer covered. But these other 4 layers, they're wide open. So those are, and so I spend a lot of time educating because I believe the more educated our clients are, then there's a higher level of accountability that they can hold us to, and we can actually stay sharp. So I believe in that training, right, and not just throwing out those technical jargon terms that they just have difficulty understanding.
No, I think that's great because I really love it when businesses take that education first approach because that's, I think one way you can really build that trust factor is by really showing people that not only do you know what you're talking about, you're trying to help them before you even have an ask.
And I had to learn that, man. I really did. I think being out in the field has been great for that. And also I had a mentor who shared some information with me. And really, there's a concept about, showing up in front of your client empty, not necessarily showing up with all the answers, but showing up to really be present and to listen and to absorb. And so that has really bode well for us as we do go out. And again, so we introduce ourselves, we explained about the, HIPAA, and about the Healthcare Cybersecurity and Resiliency Act that's currently in motion. And then we ask, do you have any questions about that? And most times they don't because it's brand new to them. And one of the things we make sure we do is we follow up with an email that explains so they can read it themselves, essentially. Right. It's just not a matter of us giving you information that we know you don't have time to really know and study. So we send them a link, very easy. We also have a webinar that we send them that they can sit and watch. It's a less than 30-minute webinar, and I sit down with our SME of our risk and practice, and we just have a conversation around it. Risk and governance, and it's a great conversation.
No, I like that. It sounds great. I mean, anything else you'd like to add or share, as business, let's put it this way, businesses and especially healthcare organizations looking at what they're doing or considering, okay, we know we need to do something. What are some of the initial steps you would recommend that they take to start this journey to, making sure they
Sure.
are having these pieces put in place?
Sure. Yeah. I'd say, do an assessment, right? And there are different levels of assessments, right? One of the assessments that we offer is, we do an external pen test. That's very, we can execute on that, pretty quickly. We get the results back pretty quickly. And then we can write up that report pretty quickly. That's an easy way to see, do you have any holes? And how I love to explain that is this assessment will make sure that all the proper doors are locked and the windows are closed, right? This is a very, great first step to take. And we're just making sure that, you don't have any obvious holes, right? And the other thing we, talk about is HIPAA. And so we actually have a HIPAA assessment that we do high level, sit down, answer a few questions, and then we provide an executive overview of that. And so how I explain that is this questionnaire will ask you everything from your policies and procedures, and then we'll get down into the nitty gritty of some of the technical aspects as well. But you will walk away from this assessment with a clear idea of where you stand and help you understand what your gaps really are. The opportunities that I've had to do this, most of those practices have, they're basically shocked because they find out that, wow, although our EHR may be HIPAA compliant, our practice as a whole, there's some work to do. And I think that's really, really what it is we're trying to emphasize here. HIPAA is not just your EHR. It's so much more than that. And I think that's probably the resounding message. HIPAA extends beyond your EHR and your SaaS provider. And another thing that I've love to share with them is with what's occurring with the Healthcare Cybersecurity and Resiliency Act. I believe a lot of these SaaS providers, EHR providers, are going to elevate what their requirement is to be on their platform, because if the client gets compromised, right, in some way, and then that brings that EHR into play, right? If that laptop, that tablet is compromised, and records start to be exfiltrated and that name of that company, whatever they are, I believe as this bill goes into act, I believe that there's a great possibility that these SaaS providers are going to have these practices sign some sort of NDA that says that they're doing their due diligence to ensure that they're HIPAA compliant, not just relying on their SaaS platform for all that governance. Right. Because here, how about this, right? Let's just use onboarding and offboarding. Let's say someone leaves the organization, but you don't turn off their account. Yeah, they still have access to the ER, right? All those kind of things play into HIPAA, right? What is your onboarding, offboarding process, right? Something as simple as that. If someone leaves the organization and maybe they don't leave in the best possible way, here's another thing, David. You and I know this. Most attacks, the majority of the attacks really, well, let's say this, let's say a high number are from internal. It's from people who are already onboarded, right? So that was another one of the top five in that top five list of commonly made mistakes is that they're not assuming that someone internal can be malicious. And we know that that's not the case.
Yeah, and the other thing is, someone may not even be trying to do it on purpose. It's just, we're human, we make mistakes. I'm
Yes.
sure, I've caught myself clicking on something I should, I'm sure we've all done it, Terry. You've probably seen some very convincing emails too, and
Yes.
may have accidentally clicked before your mind caught up and realized, oh no, that's not legit. But
Correct.
human error is another big factor, and like you mentioned earlier, training your people, recognizing it. No, it's not a one and done. It's an ongoing, threats are ever changing. So the training you need is ever evolving to kind of keep up. And, you've also got to do it on the regular to refresh. Just like from a professional standpoint, you got to, do your continuing education. You got to have those credits. Technology is no different. It changes to just like, healthcare standards and, new procedures and things come out, new medication. You've got to learn, you've got to train. The same principle applies here.
Yes, sir, for sure, and I'm glad you brought that up too, right? Because as a part of what we do, and I'm sure you do as well, we actually will help you understand and put you in real world situations to help you become aware of what a phishing email looks like, right? We will, do those on a monthly basis, right? We will send, hey, and those folks who need some practice, we get alerts on those. Oh, okay, this person's, for the third time in a row, they've clicked on a phishing email. And so we train you on how to look at the different URLs and, and they're so sophisticated now, the fact that AI has come in, right? They don't have all the misspelled words and the things that they used to do now, right? They'll scrape a logo and yeah, they are pretty sophisticated. And just to hit a little bit on that AI, we bring some awareness about that. Most of the smaller practices that we are or have been engaged with, it's the EHR that's bringing forth that technology, and so we equip them with the proper questions to ask. What kind of governance does your EHR have? What model was it trained on? Um, are there scenarios where, as a part of the workflow, there is a human in the loop? Right. So just helping them understand, what was the model trained against? What is the threshold for error with the model, right? In terms of hallucinations or in terms of bias, right? There's a lot out there. So again, we've just really started down that path as we are, engaging, on the compliance conversation. But again, there's a lot for us, a lot of opportunity out there for us.
Certainly is. And one thing I want to mention, because you mentioned AI. So, I've been having a lot of these conversations, with actual providers. One thing, they bring up, or I always like to ask, because it, usually is somewhere in our list of questions, or I'll ask, AI. Surprisingly, a high number have told me that they are currently using or have evaluated or are planning to integrate AI into their practice, whether that's something they're using directly or even that's something through their, EHR, EMR platform that they already have it. And so I know that's another kind of factor now that, we have to be aware of because, every business is going to be to the point where we're using AI for something and just understanding, what is the back end, what model is being used, how is it treating the data, is your information siloed from the public data set, or is it in the public data set to know what you should or should not be, feeding into that AI tool? Because again, that could be a pretty drastic, situation and HIPAA violation, if the data is not protected in some way and ends up in that, public data pool.
Correct. 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 And even right, and I ask questions, right? Is the AI helping, is it just transcribing that note or is it writing the note? And then if it is writing the note, are you going back and, you know, is the workflow such that a human in the loop has to approve the note? And then, are there markers, right, within the note that you actually have to check off, right? We're not just checking at the bottom save and prove. No. Are there markers throughout the note where it's proven that a human is, you literally have to go and, check more than one spot within that note to approve it, right? So just things like that. Right, because we know, right, as humans, right, we're like water. We're gonna find the hole, right? We're going to find the easiest way to get to where you're good, and how is the platform checking that? Again, what you don't measure, you can't manage. So do you have, some sort of method to actually validate what it is you're expecting, right? I had a person I used to work with and they say this all the time. I love this. Inspect what you expect, right? Inspect it. You're expected to be there, but inspect it. So again, that's just another way of saying what you don't measure, you can't manage.
That's very true. So I know we're kind of approaching our time here, so just want to recap a little bit, some highlights, from my perspective. Obviously, number one, education for sure. But two, kind of understand, what's actually going on in your practice and realize that you can even be a solopreneur out there, doing your own thing. You still need all this IT protection because you're still going to run the same things larger practices, mid-sized practices do as well. And just understand, regulations and, how it applies to every layer, not just your EMR.
Yes, David, I think I love how you said that, how it applies to every layer. So I got a meeting today. I'm going to use that. It applies to every layer. That's a great way to say that. And here's the thing, guys, it's coming, right? And we know that, the organizations who've been engaged and get a seat at the table to help push what the policy looks like. Right, they're already preparing. It's the small and mid-size that once it gets approved, everyone's going to be playing from the same sheet of music, so to speak. So again, to David's point, we want you to be ready sooner than later. And this is not something you want to procrastinate on. And I would say, you can feel free to reach out to Lift Life Technology. I'm sure you can reach out to David. David and I are going to stay connected because, we want to fight this battle together. That's one of the big things that David brought out earlier, in that it takes all of us. And so there's so many of practices out there that need the help. We want to partner, and even what we're doing here is a level and layer of that partnering. But if you want to reach me, Terry Baylor, www at lift, as in a living, as in lifting weights, life, as in a great life, and tech.com. So that's liftlifetech.com. And I can also be reached at 832-288-8878. And, if it's something out of my wheelhouse, I'll be like, hey, I know a guy, right? His name's David, because I am only focused in on healthcare. And I know, David, you have a broader vertical than myself, but this is our sweet spot, and this is, where we're hanging our hat and where we want to be known.
Yeah, and for anyone who is looking for Tier's information or my information, again, all that will be in the description below the video. So don't worry, we'll have it there for you. Don't wait till you have like a dire need to reach out. If things are quiet, if you're having no problems, that is the perfect time to reach out because that's when we can truly focus when we're not having to fight whatever this little fire is because some incident has happened. So when things are quiet, that is the perfect time. So then hopefully we can prevent that incident from ever occurring. So don't wait. Be proactive because obviously that's how we're going to help you by being proactive in the solutions we employ.
Sure, and I agree with you 100% on that, David. And to really kind of piggyback on that, guys, put a plan together for 2026 and having a conversation with David, right, or someone like myself. if nothing else, roadmap what it is you think you want to do, and that will get you well ahead, right? Well ahead, and you're not working from behind the curve, but you're in front of the curve. So thank you, David, for having me.
You're welcome. Thank you, Terry. Yeah, and guys, even if it's just, hey, you want to reach out to myself or Terry, we both offer, some. It sounds like we both offer some complimentary assessments that can help give you an idea at a pretty fundamental, basic level as to okay, where you sit now. We'll get some exist that can help jumpstart your planning as well. So again, Terry, thank you so much for coming on, and thank y'all for checking out this latest episode. Appreciate it.